Hi everyone, today we're working on the high clearance additions for the LoPro winch bumper. If you have not installed the LoPro winch bumper, you'll want to go visit the install instructions for the LoPro bumper to see how to cut the center portion of the plastic. And while the bumper cover is off the vehicle, you can reference these instructions to cut the plastic for the high clearance sides at the same time. The first thing we need to do, if you have a LoPro installed already, is remove this plastic support bracket on each side of the LoPro bumper. When you receive the high clearance additions, you'll get two pieces of paper with templates printed on them. So you'll want to cut out the templates and then tape them onto the plastic bumper. So you'll take this lower template, align it into this corner where the existing bolt was. Make sure it's all the way in the corner and that these edges line up nicely with the lines of the plastic, and then tape it in place with masking tape. Same with this template here. Make sure it follows the line where the bumper meets the fender really well, and then along the edge of the fender flare, and tape that piece in place as well. Once your templates are in place, you'll want to add a small piece of tape right at the very top edge of the lower template. Once the tape is in place, then you can remove the bottom template. Be careful not to tear it because you will need to reuse it for the other side. So once you've added that short piece of tape above the lower template, you want to take a longer piece of tape and attach right below the short one. And then pull that tape all the way up to the front bottom corner of the upper template. Make sure that you get your tape as straight as possible across that line, and that it's not curved or arcing as it goes across the front of the bumper. Once you've pulled the long piece of tape all the way across the front of the bumper, you just want to line it up right at the bottom edge of this plastic clip. Here is where you want it to wrap around the fender flare. Once you've got that tape in place, you can then remove this template from the bumper. That one will need to be reused, so be sure not to tear it. And you can also remove this small piece of tape that was applied earlier. Alright, so we transferred our templates over to the driver's side of the bumper, put on our long piece of masking tape, and now we're ready to remove the bumper cover to cut the plastic. You're going to want to take the bumper cover off no matter what, just because it's a lot easier to have access to bolt on the high clearance sides when the cover is off. So we recommend removing the bumper cover to do the cutting and finish the installation. You can reference the LoPro install instructions to see how to remove the plastic bumper cover. Okay, so we've got our bumper cover removed now. We're getting ready to cut the plastic. So you'll want to cut on the top, right along the top of this tape line, all the way across. Some multiple tools that you can use for that. We just use an angle grinder with a 4.5 inch cutoff wheel. It seems to work pretty well for us. So now you can go ahead and cut the plastic bumper cover. Now we are prepping the high clearance additions to get them ready to install onto the LoPro. So when you get the parts, there will be four 1/4-inch bolts supplied with 2 nuts that go on each one and a red rubber bumper. So you'll find that there's a threaded tab welded onto the high clearance side here, and there's going to be a threaded hole in this plate here. And you want to take the 1/4-inch bolts, thread a nut onto the bolt first, then thread the bolt in from the back side of the tab, and then you'll want to leave about a 1/4 inch of threads from the end of the bolt to the second nut, and then thread your rubber bumper onto the end of that part. And you want to tighten the second nut against the rubber bumper so that the bumper is in place. And you want to leave these loose so they can be easily adjusted by hand once the high clearance side gets bolted onto the LoPro. So once the threaded rubber bumpers are installed onto the high clearance pieces, we're now ready to bolt the high clearance pieces onto the LoPro bumper. So what you're going to get with them are these large mounting plates, and you'll get 10 total 3/8 by 1 carriage head bolts with flat washers and flange nuts. So these mounting plates are identical. You can use either one on either side, and they line up on the inside of the bumper with these mounting holes here. And you're going to use the existing slots in the side of the LoPro to run the bolts through. So this support plate will go on the inside of the bumper behind these existing slots, and then you'll install the carriage head bolts from the inside of the bumper and attach them through the high clearance side. So now we've got the high clearance wings bolted in position. We showed where the inner mounting plate goes, and you just line them up inside the frame here and put all of the carriage head bolts in from the inside pointing out. So there's 5 bolts total with 3/8 flat washer and flange nut on the outside. So when you're lining those up, you'll want to measure down 1 inch from the top edge of that LoPro support piece down to the actual high clearance mounting plate. So if you go 1 inch all the way across here, and then measure from the fender flare down to the top corner, is about 4 3/4 of an inch, a little bit more there. We found that those measurements tend to line up pretty nicely with the cut in the plastic. So you want to adjust both high clearance arms to those numbers on each side. And then you want to make sure that the bolts for the rubber bumpers are threaded all the way back right now, just to keep them out of the way when you're ready to put the plastic bumper cover back on. So the next thing we're going to do before we reinstall the plastic bumper cover is cut the plastic inner fender. So we're going to cut straight across right above these vents here, and right along the bottom edge of this clip. You might have to trim a little bit of that clip off, but we want to retain the part that the screw actually goes through so that it can stay connected to the bumper cover. We're going to do the same thing on both sides. I'm going to go straight across on the driver's side and retain as much of this clip as possible. So the last piece we're going to install before putting the bumper cover back on is going to be this windshield washer fluid bottle cover. So this particular 4Runner does not have the actual bottle mounted, but that cover will mount underneath behind this bolt and behind this one here that supports the LoPro bumper. So you'll need to remove this bolt, loosen that one so the bracket can twist and come away from the frame, and remove this bolt here. Now we've got the washer bottle cover attached. It's all mounted, and we reinstalled this upper bolt and this one here that goes through the LoPro support bracket. And don't forget to re-tighten this carriage head bolt here as well. So that piece is done. Also, we trimmed out the inner fender, just cut straight across, and we left this little clip here so that it can reattach to the plastic bumper. And one final thing we need to show now, because it will be hard to see after the bumper cover is on. Once the plastic cover gets put back onto the vehicle, you'll want to get in behind here and adjust these bolts and put a little pressure on the plastic bumper and kind of push the bumper out to where you want it to line up. And this will help, just putting pressure on that will help keep the plastic portion of the bumper from moving around and getting pushed back by wind as you're driving. So you'll want to adjust those rubber bumpers into position where you want them, and then you want to spin this nut all the way up to the bracket and tighten it against it so that the bolt cannot spin and the bumper will stay adjusted where you want it. So as you're installing the plastic bumper cover, you want to get this lower corner over this steel plate first, and then you have to work your way across and push the plastic in at the top to get it behind the LoPro. And then you'll want to pull out on this lower portion at the same time to get it in front of that rubber bumper. Alright, so we just finished installing the plastic bumper cover back onto the 4Runner. So the final thing we had to do before we reattached all of the clips around the headlight and the fender and everything, we had a few kind of low spots and a little wavy places in the plastic cut. So we took the plastic and peeled it out a little bit and got in there and sanded a little material off to make the cut look a little more even and smooth. And then also we had to move these arms down just a little bit. They were just slightly high. So if you peel the plastic open a little bit, you can get in there and loosen the bolts and adjust the high clearance additions to fit the plastic as you would like them to fit. So now all of that hardware has been tightened up. We adjusted the rubber bumpers on the inside and tightened the nuts against the screws to hold those in place. The remaining things to do are all included in the LoPro installation instructions. You just have to reinstall all the plastic clips and the metal screws that go in by the fender well. And the install for your high clearance additions is now complete.